Okay, so here we are back with Revolution and beginning of turn 2. And the first thing that happens is raise taxes. We'll do it correctly this time, starting with the Catholics. They get $2 for these, and we'll grab 6 for the 2 cities. And we won't cheat and try to see if we can give them money for those things. We'll go around and do the rest of the people. I gotta say, I mean, I'm still not in my swing gaming wise, and I don't know if and when I'll ever get there. I mean, I took a day or two off already just because, I don't know. I mean, other things just attract me more, and even not things that are particularly interesting or fun. You know, I mean, going for a walk is cool and everything. That I understand. But other stuff, I'm just like, you know, jerking off or whatever instead of playing. Okay, all the money's collected. People with the big money are the reformers, and they actually have a fair number of pieces on the board, and it kind of, you know, corresponds to having a lot of cards that gives you money, whatever. This looks dangerous because I don't have a lot of pieces to expand. The thing is, the way the player turn order goes, your chance to expand your pieces comes after you can buy armies, and after, and this is the important thing for the reformers because their armies are not particularly expensive, after you can buy the water beggars. Now, the danger here is if the reform armies don't get destroyed, I won't be able to suck in all that cash each time. But I can actually run through all that money and, you know, get towards the maximum of pieces. So now we go to the off-board boxes and see if we want to push them in as support. Here I could send these to any bishopric. Now, those are actually pretty good at producing additional units, so I'm not going to do that unless I'm short on units and really want them, and probably I'm going late in the turn. I don't think I have any real desire to get guys out of those off-board boxes particularly, because they each produce an additional unit, which is as good as being in a town or a city or whatever. There's other things they don't do, but they're good. They're good places to be, and they're safe. I saw a fair number come on. I mean, you can see most of them are still there, but there were different thoughts. So, for example, the reformers, they don't have a lot of pieces to put down. Leaving guys out there isn't helping them. More money is helpful, and it gets recycled back in. And the same thought went with the Habsburgs. The nobles actually wanted a piece here, and it felt like they have a very high commitment out there. The burghers are kind of not committed at all. So that's where we went. And now we're in armies, which is going to be paying for maintaining the existing and then raising new. And I'll come back if anything exciting happens. I mean, I can show you where the armies go. Everybody bought as many armies as they could, basically. For the reformers, they still have a pile of money. They will be buying water beggars when it comes time. And now we go to the actual battle outcomes, and we can just resolve those in any order. It really doesn't matter. We have a fair number of standoffs in place. Over here, the nobles snuck in because they would force a battle between the more and less Catholic powers in play. I'll run through those. After we finish that, we'll get to the sieges. Okay, we only have one siege, which is the nobles going into Haarlem. Everywhere else, people had the armies where they're, you know, where they own the cities. That's okay. Then we go to the water beggars. I'm placing them all in one place. I may have screwed them up last time. It allowed them to do things that they can't really do. They have to basically, in order to do anything proactive, they have to basically outnumber the enemy. They have to actually be the only armies in the place. But that happens after they hit the eliminate armies, which is if they exceed the total number of armies. So no, wait a minute. I'm not sure they're done in order. I may have to redo this. See, it's given an ordering here, but I'm not sure that I think they have to actually be in place. I think they have to exceed in order to eliminate an army for each piece they have there. Which means I would have to send all three to eliminate one Habsburg here. But sending two there works, and one here. And what we're going to do is we're going to prevent this siege from happening, and we're going to destroy a Habsburg army with one of these. The other one can't do anything because we weren't the only things present. So it takes two water beggars really to wipe out an army. That's the way I'm reading it now. It's not absolutely clear, but all the water beggars happen in one phase according to this. It's not as clear when you're reading the rules, but in the play aid they just have one step, which means we go to army movement and then the military being able to grab territories or to grab influence pieces. Manpower count, more of the players have managed to get a fair number of additional pieces. Only the reformers and burghers are at the minimum, and that's showing a significant decline, especially for the reformers, that they've kind of been screwed so far at this point. I'm not quite sure what they've done terribly wrong. They don't have a lot of towns. That hurts. So, they were able to get points off the cities for the victory points. They were able to get points off their reform universities, but so they showed up fairly strong here. They had a lot of pieces on the board last turn and were able to affect some things, but now they don't get as much production. And there's sort of that kind of flow to things. You can see the Catholics were doing well before, and they've got a pile, but you see the nobility were able to regenerate troops by using the off-board map, the off-map boxes in order to generate some more pieces, and they got almost all their pieces. Nobody ran out, which is cool. Now it's time to place them. Compared to the first turn placement, or the 0 turn placement, or whatever, you can only put a number of pieces. You can't put double the pieces you have in a province in. However, if you control the province, like Hainaut or Artois, you can throw as many pieces as you like into the province. Going early, the Catholics have chosen to put a fair number of pieces into off-board boxes so that they get more production. Now that's going to cut into their victory points. That's okay. What you want to kind of do, though, is as you get towards the end of the game, you want to make sure your cycling is, like, you may disrupt your cycling before the last turn of the game just to try to make sure that you're getting sort of your maximum pieces for that last turn coming in from the support boxes. You got to be a little careful, though, because like this support box, this just turns into money, which you may or may not actually need. This support box can only, most of the support boxes can only go into specific locations in the game, which has its own problems. Nobles found themselves in a position where they placed all their legitimate and allowed placements and still, oh, no, they didn't. I was going to say, and still had a piece left, but I see I found another one of their pieces. These things are all going to get wiped out in a lot of places. They're not places they would want to put. And of course, they got a lot of bank there. if need be. But what we saw was, you know, they're going to get control of Brabant, and they're going to get a competition in Holland, but everywhere else they're going to be very, very weak still. Everybody else is brighter than me, and I'm sure you're already saying you do this, but I'm putting some little tokens down to remind me which regions I've already calculated the conflicts for, especially since I tend to walk away from the board sometimes in the middle of longer activities like this. I think it's a good idea to keep track of it. Something might happen and I might have to run quickly. I want to be able to reconstruct my position easily. But even, you know, playing multiplayer and everything, this is kind of, doing it all at once is even just kind of a pain. So I think logging which regions you've done, or you could do it down to the provinces with the cards, but I don't think that's necessary. Overflow strategy out of Utrecht that was done on the first turn by the reformers seemed kind of impressive. So the Burghers tried something similar out of the Generality, and they've been kind of doing it, but they're finding the limits of it, which is that everything adjacent to them is pretty much full. One of the reasons it worked so well in Utrecht was because there were a lot of sieges in Holland, so there were a lot of pieces that weren't. I've got a couple of extra pieces I have to discard because I've got to match, you know, the limits at this moment. Now, one of the reasons it isn't that good, and you don't want to put a whole pile of overflow pieces into place no matter what, is the neutrals flood in first. And I'm not sure I did that correctly last time. So I had the feeling that I got out of Utrecht with a lot of pieces. Now maybe I only pulled a couple pieces out, one into here, but I thought I put more into Holland. I'm not sure. That's going to throw us to settling down on where we are inside the province. And kind of interesting thing is the stuff that's under siege, that doesn't count against the limits. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've got Flanders full, but there's a siege going on there. So that's going to be over full after the siege. It's just one of the natures of the game. So if a lot of sieges are going on, there's going to be more conflict among the pieces later. We got another muck up. Again, referring to these fuckers, these little connection towns. And some of it may be, you know, a nice play, and there are some available on BGG which solve this. But yeah, I forgot to take these into account during when I assigned the new units. Now, you know, it's here, it's in the support, but you know, it's just it's so hard for because I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. The rulebook definitely does not encourage correct play from me, at least, but neither does my mental state. And so, you know, you're probably better off looking at the original playthrough of this. I just shouldn't be doing these anymore. I'm not capable of it. I'm not capable of focusing on games enough. Anyway, I started repositioning pieces, and I'm getting what I was looking at was, geez, you know, can I accurately, what would be my best move here? And we're on the reformers right now in Flanders. Is it more important for me to have Ghent? Well, I looked at the Ghent card to see what it connects to, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't account for those fuckers this time. I counted for towns, so I guess part of my analysis as to where to put my pieces is whether or not I'm going to remember to include those little white towns that are listed on each of the cards next time that I produce additional influence points. There's no way I can go back, you know. I mean, it's basically either stop playing and can it right here, which I'm considering, you know. I mean, just because I've screwed so much up, I'm not enjoying filming anymore. You know, here's the thing, or I don't think the film is doing any damn good for anybody at all. And I don't know, like I said, I just should give these shit up. but I am enjoying playing. So maybe I'll just play and stop worrying about filming. The most interesting positioning happened in Holland, where you can see the nobles have grabbed a couple of the cities, pushed the neutrals into a lot of the towns. The burghers could have gone for towns, but they wanted to grab a city. Just it's too much of an advantage for the nobles, and to give them all three of the cities there. What that means, though, is that I'm abandoning, not that I could have had it, control. Nobody's going to get control of Holland itself. Now, Holland itself isn't worth all that much. Might be victory point wise. Nope. It's just a $1 province. Provinces are, a buck or a half. So cities are almost guaranteed to be better than control of the province. Now, control of the towns and the province is an interesting combination. Not that the towns give any money, but each town is worth one person. So instead of being here in Leyden, where I'm only getting one person, I could be in 2 towns and I could be getting 2 additional people. The thought that has to go with there, though, is, hey, maybe I have Arnhem or Utrecht. Well, good luck figuring that out. But Arnhem's over here and Utrecht's there, so the answer is actually no. In some of these cases, some of the towns are hard to find, as you have seen, which it may also contribute to my not actually looking for them. Not that I think consciously, gee, I don't want to do that work, but just subconsciously, you kind of block out things that are obnoxious and painful in a game. And sometimes those are the things you skip, A lot of cash left over to play the bidding wars here. I always feel like they get kind of short shift because, you spend your cash on the armies, they have an obvious purpose, but then you get around to this, and this can affect influence directly. However, it's hard to see right away what the effects are going to be. You have to project the turn in advance. So generally, it's just whatever cash you have left lying around. In this case, both the Catholics and the Reformers played. The Reformers only had $1. The nobles chose not to play. They're the only other person with money. And the reason why, Reformers and Catholics are in the lead here. I'm going to let them spend their money for stuff like that. I can use this cash. I've got a lot of armies available to build. I'm going to stockpile this. I probably am not going to get a lot of cash next turn, it doesn't look like. So I think that's for the best. Catholics are earlier in the order, so theirs take place first. Now this boom boom has no effect. They don't just cancel out. There has to be room for you to send it in the direction you're going, and of course you can only move it 3 spaces. That gets us to the assignment process. And we'll try to do this in as effective a manner as possible, and if I learn anything exciting about how to do it, I'll bump forward what I'm doing. But I think I'll just be going through the cards, really. Working with the cards themselves, first go through the neutral pile, then each player's pile, and assessing the universities and bishops and cities all at the same time seems to definitely make this a little easier. But I think you don't want to jump in and do that right away. I think you want to play a couple of turns like I did, going through the misery of doing everything before you feel comfortable enough to assess everything at once. Now, you could definitely use the cards for just the provincial and cities, but then you still have to go back to the universities and bishoprics, and that's really where a lot of the gain is that I'm doing them all at once, instead of running down the line. Now, I can do a double check on these afterwards, and I probably will. So, as we push into turn 3, this is our current victory point position. The burghers look like they're doing pretty poorly in victory points. Everybody else is kind of way up there. However, well, this is why the burghers are doing poorly. They've got forces spread into those crap areas. Now, they had to do that for various reasons, or they felt they had to. But They actually, yeah, they don't have a lot in reserve either. And they're in some weird places like, yeah, I don't know. It's actually the nobles who are in weird places up in Holland and the major cities there. I'm not sure what's up with that. But those are worth victory points, and that's part of what is getting them so high. One thing that's worth doing, and maybe the nobles are actually really doing this, is to kind of avoid having a lot of victory points so that you can go late in the turn. There's very little reason that I see for wanting to go first. Yes, you get to grab more important locations in the province. That doesn't matter too much for cities, but it matters for some of the towns, especially if you're interested in bishoprics and you're interested in the universities. I guess one of the biggies that happened here was Cologne went over to reform. That's kind of a big deal. All right, let's move forward, and we'll get a couple of turns on this video. Taxation in this turn 3, which is really the 4th turn, but whatever, because that pre-turn feels like a turn. I see a couple of people pretty have pretty much drained their stock into treasury. In particular of interest is the nobles, who actually had so few pieces they had to tax at 1, because you can't go over your stock, unlike civilization, where you just move over whatever you cut out of the cash. Here you have to actually be able to cover it, I think. You can see where that's a problem, actually, where you can't even tax at 1. And I don't know what the effect of that is. Let me make sure I'm correct about that, because that seems weird. All cities must be taxed. A shortage of available. Oh, no. So, yeah, I can tax more. And I keep misreading that. Okay, now it's time to look at all the support boxes and figure out if we want to pull things in from them. Reformers aren't there. The Catholics do have some, for whatever reason. Most of the support boxes just got cleared out completely. To some extent, it's kind of a useful thing, because the support boxes are places where you can put pieces that maybe you can't put on the board easily and then flush them in. So, for example, for the burghers, they're trying to establish themselves in Holland, and they saw the nobles throw a lot of pieces in there, and they're like, wow, we're going to lose one of the few territories that we have. We have a little bit of power right in here, and we need to fight for that a little harder, because our board value is very low right now. And Holland's worth a lot of points. Why the nobles threw all over the place, I'm not so sure. That's a little harder. The Habsburgs went in heavily here. Hey, they're trying to cut the reformers down. They see, basically, this is what happened, is the nobles started going after the Catholics heavily, and the Habsburgs said, okay, let's go after both the Catholics and the reformers. Let's try to knock down the people who are in the lead. At this point, it's time to pay for and play with the armies. I don't know if it's wise or not, but people are playing their armies right now for no conflict. You've got places where, there's 2 armies, but those are standoffs. In particular, that's kind of interesting, because if you don't own the city there, you can knock out and besiege the city and take it over. Now, you may not want to do that, because this is turn 4, or this is turn 3. Next turn is turn 4. Yeah, you do want to do it. You'd like to be able to do it on turn 5 to grab those cities for the victory points. But it's early enough in the game. I think it's still worth grabbing something ahead of time. On turn 4, I think people probably won't want to grab opportunity cities, just because, yeah, it'll give them extra resources on turn 5. But it will also make it possible that the other person can do the same thing on turn 5. And there's just something kind of weird about the decision making as to how to handle the armies. Now, the whether or not you want to get involved in conflicts is a weird decision. obviously the Habsburgs want to get all their armies out, so they don't particularly want to lose armies. But other people, what do they care? I mean, like, they don't mind losing them. Well, they went first, so everyone else got to choose to avoid where they put their armies and not engage them. Other people actually can, are having difficulty getting all their armies out, so that's not that big a deal. And I think we get down to lay sieges, and we'll start dropping those suckers in as to grabbing cities. As a military standoff, it kind of really does mean that if the players so choose. So for example, up here, the reformers grabbed this. Well, the Habsburgs took it back. If the reformers had taken something over here, the Habsburgs would then be able to expand. So you had to take something of the Habsburgs in that case, and leave them with the choice of, do we flip, or do we switch who controls what and leave it up to fights otherwhere. Well, the Habsburgs have another conflict with the reformers down here. This one a little different because the reformers went here, so the Habsburgs were able to grab a reformer territory or a little piece. The only exception to that is sieges. Where there's sieges going on, somebody moved in, that's why. Gotcha. Where there's sieges going on, you can't. By the way, the Waterbeggars had almost no effect. They canceled out a couple of sieges up here that they didn't really care about, but I had to spend the money. Where there's sieges going on, you are actually seeing things change sides, which is kind of nifty because sieges were the important factors militarily. So now we're going to start counting up pieces and seeing what people have, and I'll try to remember to actually do it right this time with those white city locations. I think I may have screwed up my counts, but I'm not going to go back and do them again. This is what we have. Basically, yeah, I did my whites, and then I forgot towns, and I went back and did that, and then I forgot that towns don't count towards the countryside stuff, whereas they do when you're counting something else that you, maybe the burger or the nobles victory points or something like that, which is very similar. What does count is these suckers. Big pile of reformers coming in. Others, though, like the nobility, ran out of pieces. Burghers are actually the only group that didn't get to their 7, so they have 7. Well, I'm not sure. I think the Catholics, what did they get? 1, 2. They may be over. I gotta recount. Yeah, I'll recount the Catholics and Reformers. They're the 2 that I may have screwed up. So they may be a piece less. I pulled a piece off the Reformers already because I'm positive they were a piece over. Everything was right. Now this is the step, counting these things, that is the hardest and most painful in the game. First of all, because it has these where you have to try to hunt down where all these different locations are that are, some of them are fairly unimportant. They're just towns that are on the map, and I think they're all white print towns, I hope. But they're still very, very hard to see. The writing on the board is, for anything other than the province names itself, is very hard to read. And then add to that, there's enough clutter on the board. And then you have to count the towns, which sometimes aren't clear or even in existence because of the clutter on the board, and then count all the pieces that aren't in the towns and do some division. It is very, very mechanically painful. There's a fair amount of mechanical overhead to the game, period, but that is the hardest piece. And I like to get them all counted out before I start placing, because then it starts getting more and more complicated if you count them after people place them. Nothing changes in between. All right, I need a break at this point. All the placements are down, and with this game, so many pieces end up. There's so much complexity to the calculation. Yes, you can figure out whether or not you're going to lose an extra piece or something, but to some extent, unlike in Civilization, it's not immediately obvious because the numbers are so high. So I kind of grow discouraged and just start slapping pieces down, even with the last place burgers who had placement here. Now, one thing they did is they slapped a couple extra pieces into the generality. That's an overflow situation, but what I noticed is my river takes me down here to Liege, whatever, yeah, which would allow me to expand into there. I gotta be careful. I better not put 2 extra pieces in there. One I can always squeeze in. There will be at least one space. I can count this and see what's going to come of it. Does overflow happen before sieges are resolved? Yes. Okay, so we've got 2, 4. I've already got a piece here. There's actually room for additional pieces, but there's only room for 1 because overflow happens after the neutrals flood in. So there's only going to be space for 1 extra guy in there, which, because I can't get past this city, it's not owned by me. I don't want to end up with people like this guy in Limburg. He's just a problem, so I'm going to throw a guy up here. We got a little bit of attempts to recharge those boxes. Those can be important, not so much the treasury, but the other ones. And I guess we start resolving all these conflicts. And now the bids on the city's going to place. The reformers grabbed some cities in Flanders that they're not going to be able to hold. This is where some of the complexity of this game comes into, just the mental complexity of trying to grasp what you have, where it is, and everything. And then you realize, oh, wow, I don't have the money to buy those off, and I'm going first, which means the Catholics who do have money are going to counter me. So what we're going to see is boom, boom, which means I'm going to lose Antwerp. Bruges also. I'm holding that with 1 piece. Are we doing things right here? Fuck. Before the sieges were resolved, we had to move. God damn, this game is just killing me. Okay, so these weren't actually allocated yet. I'll leave the other ones alone. I have to try to remember where the sieges were because I forgot to move my pieces. I did the conflict and the overflow and then skipped over movement. This huge long sequence of play in tiny print, from my eyes, doesn't work. And that's the problem. The player aids are, even tinier print because they're trying to cram more information onto an 8x10. Okay, so I recovered back to where I think I'm supposed to be. And now these push forward. And I've got to look at these cities and affect what they're going to do. So Aachen here has, remove an anti-Catholic. Aachen I think is fine. I don't know. There it is. Amsterdam has remove an anti-Catholic. Nobles are not anti-Catholic. Antwerp goes both ways. So 1 anti-Catholic is removed and a Catholic is put in, and that's going to take that out of their hands. And likewise with Bruges. But it ends up nobody controls these. Would I have done things the same? I really don't give a shit. I don't even know why I'm playing this anyway. I mean, I'm not enjoying because I'm fucking up so much. And you're not enjoying watching because it doesn't serve any purpose anymore. Just go watch the old one and I should just pack this shit in. I don't know why I fucking bother playing anymore. Now I gotta do the assignment and I don't want to face it. Alright, and also coming back, I noticed another screw up. Where I've got these bishops, I've been assigning them to the people who held the town, which looks right because that's where the bishop's sitting. No, the town doesn't matter at all for the bishop. It's control of the province that matters for the bishop. And whatever. You know? Anyway, I'm trying to rectify that as I'm doing my processing, but there's just there's so much that's difficult to have a handle on in terms of the maintenance in this game. We see a dramatic point shift with the hits done against the Catholics and Reformers especially. The burghers, I don't know, they're just collapsing. Like last time at least they had some pieces out off board, but they're really kind of failing here. All they've got of any importance is Holland and Generality. The rest is just garbage, these one-pointer. No victory points at this point, and total crap. Other than that, you see a strong stance by the Habsburgs. Actually, they look a lot better off than they did, but the real big one is the nobles, and they kind of won the Battle of Holland in terms of grabbing the cities, etc., and also expanded their way down here into this Catholic territory, which is pretty big. You see a lot more black spaces on the board. People, probably because of the way I wasn't as concerned about trying to actually win territories, but also because territories and bishoprics are the same thing. But we got a couple of cities that ended up split whole things and stuff like that. Just as I blunder through. All right, we'll be going on to the next turn. I don't know. I'm really afraid that, like, my great difficulty with this wasn't there the first time I played it. I don't remember this. And that this is a sign of, like, my mental collapse, or at least a mental emotional collapse combined when applied to the idea of, like, gaming things. But this was early on. Maybe just the energy burned me through. I was willing to sit down and play it straight through or whatever. I don't know. And something else big that I missed. You know, I think I'm just going to clean this up. I've screwed up so much. The movement in the provinces is not done by player order. It's done by the amount of influence you have in the province. That makes a whole hell of a lot more sense. The player order thing just kind of did randomness to the whole thing. Whoever's the most powerful in the province has the capability to, you know, choose, hey, do I want to push people out more? Although that also leaves the last place move in any given province to the person with the least pieces. So they can't grab the important towns, but they can make the decision, I want this city, or I want the province itself, which is always kind of an interesting factor in it. I'm not sure, but it gives even less importance. That was about the only thing that I could justify why you might want to be going early in the player order. It was the overall power of being able to go first during that, which allowed you to claim particular locations. The most pieces make sense because the person with the most pieces perhaps can cover multiple cities or cover the province itself, make decisions that force the other player's hands as to what locations they can actually go to. And by cover, I mean by put enough pieces in that the other people cannot possibly take that particular resource, or leave alone the most valuable resource because someone else will need to put pieces in there in order to claim it because it is more valuable, and then maybe won't challenge you on some other point that they could take. But yeah, I don't know how much effect it really has. We'll see if I can remember to do it correctly. I don't know if I did it that way the first time I played it. It's kind of buried in the rules in a sense. Like, the rules are all very, very, you know, thick blocks of text in certain areas. And here, there's a general rule of you do things in player order. And somewhere here, they start talking about There's one line. The faction with the most playing pieces moves its pieces first. Okay, yeah, it's actually italicized or something, which helps a little bit, but my brain can't see it. Yeah, there it is, but barely so. Okay. And then later on, the process continues in descending order of faction size, which it just didn't click in that was the case. I really don't know why I'm playing this anymore. Okay, entering turn 4 here. Taxes were paid out. People, of course, took as much cash as they could for the most part. Support boxes drained. Uh-oh. I need cash. Only had $1 in taxes from my province. Have to keep my armies maintained, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much good they're doing, but they do conversions of other people's stuff. And yeah, we mainly, you see the Spanish treasury emptied out. The reason is, hey, we could get blocked, and that could be painful, where we couldn't exfiltrate our cash without it getting intercepted. And then if it did get intercepted, you know, he'd sort of get double pieces off of that, whoever's in the Huguenot box. Last turn of the game is coming up. We don't want to be in there on the last turn of the game. That's basically what it comes down to, which is kind of neat. It gives a unreasonable, perhaps, reason, except for the French Civil War, for why the Spanish treasury dries up. There were other reasons for drying up than that, so I don't know. And you know, now it's time to buy and maintain the militaries. You know, I mean, misery and incompetence combined and whatever, but still, I've got a certain completionist nature that forces me to keep going. It didn't apply with Beast Lord, okay? It moves in cycles in a number of different ways, and one of the ways is the number of armies that are on the board. At this point, a lot of money was turned into armies. Well, when there's a lot of armies on the board, a lot of armies are going to get destroyed, because now we start resolving right after we build them where the attacks are. Assuming I have this right, it's really hard for me to, in part because I don't always check. I just say, hey, I'm going to do this, this, and this, right? I guess I got burned on that a couple of places. But also, you know, it's this tiny, tiny text there. It's hard for me to see. There's so many different steps, all of which have to be done, you know, precisely in order, except some of them can be combined if you think about it pretty quickly. Like, I combine maintaining and buying the armies. Probably shouldn't do that, but it doesn't have too much effect to do so. Okay, well, now we start eliminating things, and obviously here, let's see, wow, there go 4 of our armies right away. But people have to spend their money, so if they're going to take the taxes, they've got to put their armies out. They might as well do it, because they're just eliminating other people's armies too, right? Yeah, a lot of armies died, you can see. They've also taken their effects. You got the reformers fled from the far north. Get into the Holland game. So it's kind of a hard call. They might have been better off pulling back here and into Gelderland as well. But basically they're trying to set themselves up so that they can do something kind of cool next turn. Getting themselves into positions where there are, although it's hard to see, universities not there. But elsewhere where there are universities available, there's a lot of cities there. There's a university over in Leiden, which is of interest to them, of course. And, you know, just see if they can be in a position to take advantage of their points, as well as in a position to have a fair amount of pieces on the board next turn. This turn they look a little weak. It doesn't look like they're probably not going to get a lot of those pieces into play. And another thing is, this might be the turn. Yeah. No, actually, this is the turn when you want your people in those boxes, right? because next turn, if you don't pull them out of the boxes, they just produce the equivalent to what they are. So we kind of screwed up here too. And I think I did this the first time too. I had this thought of, oh yeah, I've got this cycling down. No, I don't. I missed it by one, and everybody's like screwed up and in the wrong place now. Habsburgs have a couple. But they basically didn't have anywhere they wanted to put. I mean, that's just Cologne and Trier, and they're fighting for Cologne, but wanted to hold off on throwing more pieces in at this point in order to produce more. That puts us to getting new units and me to ending this break. Okay, here are the piles of pieces available to place. It's kind of funny, I'm beginning, yeah, no, I was going to say I'm beginning to get a feel for it, but no, it's not true. I didn't count the white spaces for the cities again. Got to go back and do that because I got time to fix it. I got the capability to fix it at this point. But boy, is that a pain in the ass, that particular piece of it. So there are the new piles. Lots and lots of reformers. They look like they're going to make a big jump forward this turn. Problem? This isn't the turn I wanted. It's next turn. And I'm going to have to try to figure out how to maintain the huge amount of production I have, which is mainly coming from a lot of towns. Occupying towns is really good. After my turn order has shifted, although my turn order is late this time, that's positive. That means next turn I go into it. Yes, my turn order is not late. How do I hold on to it? I don't know, but I'll have a fair amount of pieces to hold on. And positioning is not as important in the final turn. I think positioning is really important this turn. So my guess, because of the amount of pieces they have available, even though they're way behind on victory points, that the reformers have set things up so they've got a huge advantage going into the first turn, or into the last turn. All right, and this is the position we're in at this point with, I don't know, I'm beginning to screw up tactical considerations at this point because my engagement in the game, due to the errors that I've made in terms of interpreting the rules, understanding the rules, whatever, have been so egregious that, like, yeah, now that I kind of seem to be handling it mechanically correctly, I just don't give a shit anymore. So, like, the Habsburgs lost a piece here because there was nowhere for them to overflow from. You know, that's a kind of mistake that I didn't really want to make, but I'm just trying to push through it now at this point. And the reformers put an extra piece here, so they lost when there were a couple of cases where I'm just not willing to count the pieces. It's too big a math situation. The counting's too big a problem for me to want to care anymore at this point, because I know I've screwed up so much already that I'm just pushing through it to get done. You know, why not clean it up? That's not in my nature, whatever. Okay, and we've resolved all the placements, conflicts. I don't know where I was in that, but then the placement within the province, which I have to say it does work better. There's no question, with the larger guy having to go first because he's got the most power, right? But it does take away any possible reason why you'd want to go early that I can fathom at all. Because being large now gives you the right to push your way in. Being large is kind of nice because the fights over the cities become more, the large person going first is nice because the fights within the city become more of a conflict. So, for example, here, the Habsburgs were not the largest force. The reformers went into location first. Well, this was under siege, so this wasn't available. The Habsburgs end up negating Ghent. Now, they're doing that instead of taking Flanders. That's a buck that they're not going to get. That probably was a mistake, but I wasn't really thinking, like I said. And so I'm going to take the Ghent card away from, well, it's in the Habsburgs' hands at this point, but it's going to be being taken away from the reformers, essentially, in exchange for, I don't know, nothing really, because I'm giving them this, which I shouldn't have done, but like I said, I'm making lots of mistakes now. Sieges were resolved, and Got some interesting powerhouses. The Habsburg's really, really strong over here in Cologne, which means they're probably going to be inserting forces in Trier and taking on the Catholics there. At that point in the war seems a little weird, but whatever. It's where the force goes. And I guess now we start dealing out the cards to whoever is due them. We'll have to try that again, because for some reason, whenever I read this, I jump down and I miss this allegiance section. And that has to be done. Honestly, it would be helpful to assign the cards first and then assign them again. But there's already enough mechanical complexity in this game. And not many people have cash at this point. So I don't think a lot of people are going to be playing in that game. Okay, so the game turn marker moves forward. We're going to load this one up because we don't have enough time for a last turn and a wrap. You can see the positioning. The nobles have jumped to a huge lead. Mainly, they've got pretty much all their pieces out on the board. And they've got them outside of cities for the most part. So they've got a lot of victory points. But that's actually, there are a huge amount of victory points pushing them here. Okay, you know, that's somewhat problematic because you don't want to go first. But it does show that they're in a very strong position. And they'll be able to, well, they don't have any money available here because these are the nobles. They could have gotten money out of the London merchants, but they didn't go for that. They went for support to try to push more pieces onto the board. But they're pretty much in a fixed location, which means they may get hammered pretty heavily next turn. They're in great looking position right now. If the game ended right now, they'd win, but I still stand by... I'm not sure I stand by the Reformers winning because they really took a beating this turn. You can see they're way down. The Habsburgs look kind of promising. They have a lot of pieces on the board. They're Huguenots though, which means I can't slip. Oh, there's no Spanish treasury. I could turn this into cash, which might be useful because I want to get armies on the board. If I don't have enough money from my taxation to get the armies, I may do that because armies are victory points if I use them reasonably for the Habsburgs. I also want to try to avoid conflict, which that's tough to do. It looks to me like the Catholics have taken a beating. Wow, both the Catholics and Reformers. And remember, they were in the lead, what, not so very long ago, in very strong positions. So things really fluctuate based on stuff that it just doesn't feel like you can build up any kind of momentum in this game. And some of that may be, hey, let's beat on the leaders, right? But some of it's also just the game itself has this cyclic anti-leader mechanisms in play. Obviously, though, the positioning gives, I don't know. Yeah, even the positioning is now no longer a leader thing because you can get a localized advantage instead of it being a global one. So yeah, it's pretty harsh on whoever's in the lead. We've also seen the universities kind of fall. That's not a big deal. I just have to establish them at the end of the game. The question, though, is, am I in a position to do so? And I really don't know with the Reformers. Catholics have done a fairly good job of keeping most of the bishops aligned with them. Not that that's really something terribly under their control. I mean, you know, here, for example, the Reformers, or the Burghers just grabbed this, so it starts sliding towards Reform. I have no control over what happens there. That's really a situation between the nobles and burghers, and I just have to hope it resolves in my favor somehow. Because if the burghers win again, this slides over into the anti-Catholic side. Well, I don't know what else to say. I mean, trying to capture the narrative of this game with all the mechanical problems going on, and with the way it kind of flows and feels very abstract, it's very difficult. And I feel like, you know, having played Warriors of God recently, it's on that same kind of level, really. Things can be argued, and you can do some hand waving to make sense out of it. This at least starts in a historical starting location, but it feels so abstract that I'm having real trouble linking it to the reality. Well, maybe it's just my brain's not working the way it was the first time I looked at it. Let's send her up. Although honestly, I haven't looked at my video, my final video, and I should probably do that of the first playthrough. I vaguely recollect, you know, having the impression of, wow, this looks really interesting and seems to be, you know, connected to the topicality nicely, but I didn't really get it. And then I know I played it once more at least, probably twice more, but once more with my wife and probably another time solo. And I'm not really sure that I came to a different conclusion. I know with my wife we had difficulty in getting everything right. There's just so much going on that's, you know, in terms of the rules overhead and the mechanical aspects that you have to get right. And honestly, this reference isn't deep enough, and the rule book isn't easy enough to parse quickly. So for a mind like mine, mistakes will happen. I have to be able to zoom in and see the things I need in the rule book. This one doesn't do it. It's written, I don't know in what form, and it's got all these nice case numbers, but it's also got blocks of text. And that's kind of something that GMT games do as well, where it's like, where do I find the specific piece? It's not easy there. There's a lot of the game is written up, or a lot of the rule book is filled with these long examples. They're not well distinguished so that I can just blot them out and say that's not the rules. So I start looking through this. Well, what do I have? Well, the example starts here, goes to here, and then it starts back into the rules, I guess, again here. I would like, get rid of the glossy, you know, because then I can't mark up my rules with pencil. But much more importantly, give me some light gray shading here. Get rid of the background printing. That's just, it does not serve to aid in the instructional capabilities of the thing. It's just eye candy that distracts. And the more of that there's in a rule book, the less capable I am of processing what's going on. And certainly that kind of faded in the back type thing, it just, oh. All right. I'll send this up, and you know, I'm not just trying to make excuses here. I seem to remember the first time I had trouble assessing the rules. I'll look over my final video before I end this to make sure that my experiences are correct, but I was on a much more positive note about it. I think because I was just getting back into gaming, and I thought this was kind of some of the overhead that I would pay, etc. And you know, frankly, a lot of the games from the 70s and 80s had crappy rules too, you know, but I'm having less and less tolerance for them as I go along, and you know, I'm just not willing to put the kind of effort that I did into something like EU for a giant glorified Euro. All right, let's send it up.